Alright people, good morning, and in this video I want to explain to you a little bit more in detail about liquidity pools, especially for the Fxrp USDT pools, because the majority of people, they get it wrong when they want to deploy capital and start earning using their Fxrp. They get it wrong at the time of the entry into the liquidity pool. So let me explain to you three core principles that you have to understand before entering into the DeFi pool. So in this case, if we go to Enosis, which is a different decentralized exchange from SparkDex that I showed you before, the SparkDex is still a very good DEX. I'm just playing around two different places. So as you can see, this position is still beautifully in range. I'm waiting for the next week. I believe the Fxrp minting caps will be increased October 1st, hopefully. So that's on Wednesday. We will see. And I will be minting way more Fxrp and deploying into the liquidity pools to earn more capital, because in this case so far this position is in range. It's a pretty big range. As you can see, there is not much fee going on, but still I'm just like, I like to play around to see what's happening in the markets, and this is a very early stage of this pool and this whole concept of DeFi on XRP. But as you can see, my range is 2.6 and 4.25, which is a definitely big, very wide range. So there is no the API in such pools, especially on new pools on XRP, definitely not that high. But if you choose very small ranges and you like to volatility trade, so to speak, in a small range actively, then you can earn way more Fxrp on the way and just simply have more Fxrp at the end of the day due to the fees. So we have Enosis, which is a very similar DEX to the Spark DEX. As you can see, you simply go to dex.enosis.global/liquidity. You connect your wallet, choose the Flare network, and you will see, if we search for Fxrp, we will see all of the pools that are available. So we have a wrapped Flare versus Fxrp. We have something else. We have Fxrp APS and the main pool Fxrp USDT 0. So this pool is about 500,000 in TVL. It's definitely not much in comparison to the big blue chip DeFi pools where you have millions and millions and millions in TVL. But well, let's be clear here that this Fxrp asset, first of all, it's a brand new one. And second of all, you have to understand that people seem to, the community that owns XRP, they tend to be really scared about anything else that is involving touching their XRP. So slowly we have to bring up the awareness that it's not that bad, and if you can stack more XRPs in the long run, right, then why not to do so. So now what I'm waiting the most is the Firelight staked XRP, because in that case you will be able to stake the XRP, get the API, also use the staked token in DeFi as well, borrow against it, deploy into liquidity pools without touching your main XRPs, right? The only thing you have to do is simply mint them on the Fxrp, lend them out, right? Borrow against them, deploy into the liquidity pools, earn additional fees in Fxrp and USDT 0, claim the fees regularly, convert them back to Fxrp, and you're simply stacking more Fxrp. And then essentially when the time is right, you can redeem your Fxrp back to your native XRPs, and that's it. So you are simply stacking more XRP. My aim is not to earn additional income from this. My aim is to simply stack more. That's it. So that's why I will be transferring way larger amounts and just gonna leave them there in the same range, about 45. Maybe I will expand it even more for a long-term perspective. We're going to see how this whole flare narrative TVL is going to play out. But what I wanted to share is that there is a very big mistake that people do when they come to the DeFi pools. And the biggest mistake is their deposit ratio when it's time to set the range. Because if you go to Enosis, if let's say we choose this pool, right? Now you have all of this information that can be a bit of a difficult to understand at first because you've never been involved in DeFi. So you have the position strategy, right? You have aggressive, conservative, full, custom. What's happening here? So this is essentially meaning the range. In what kind of XRP price range you want to be providing liquidity to, right? So while you are in range, you are earning from the fees that people trade. The fee comes from every single person that is swapping between XRP to USDT 0, etc. Right? When they do some sort of a swap, they pay the fee, and that fee goes to liquidity providers, LPs, people like me, right? So here, for example, we have this pool, Fxrp USDT 0. We have a few options. Some of them are just simply pre-made. Aggressive, which is pretty much very tight range, 275, 299. So it's a very tight range, meaning that you will earn high fees because you provide liquidity in a very tight concentrated ratio, right? But the moment the XRP price goes up or down, above or below your range, you are no longer earning the fees, and you are also being converted into one side of the pool. So if you deploy into the pool, for example, let's assume this is our range. If the price of XRP drops below your minimum range, right here, for example, then you will be converted fully to Fxrp. And vice versa happens if XRP goes up and it reaches the upper limit of your range and goes out of range, then you are fully converted to USDT 0. So you always have to think about what you are doing at the time of deposit, because the majority of people, they will tend to do this mistake. They will deploy in 50-50 proportion. For example, 5% down, 5% up, and just deploy into the pool. Essentially what it means that you are also buying one of the assets, either selling XRP or buying XRP based on the current price and the deposit ratio. So if we look at Enosis, let's say do conservative strategy, as you can see, Enosis is giving you this 50-50 ratio, right? That is asking you the lower range of 2.35, the upper one of 3.5. Essentially, this is like pretty much 50% spread. And what it means is that you will be deploying capital in both assets 50-50 proportion. So you will have to deploy 50% in Fxrp and 50% in USDT. But if you have in your wallet, for example, only Fxrp, then essentially what you're going to be doing is selling half of your Fxrp to USDT 0 just to deploy into this pool, which may not be a good idea based on the current XRP price. So the best thing to understand, first of all, you always go to custom strategy, always. You have to do custom strategies, right? And set the range yourself, because you have to understand the very core principle that if you deposit in equal proportion, minus 5%, plus 5%, minus 10, plus 10, doesn't matter. You will always be depositing in 50-50 ratio. So essentially, if you only have Fxrp in your wallet and you want to deploy into the pool like that in 50-50 proportion, you will be selling your XRP, which may not be a good idea based on the current market conditions. So the core idea that I am trying to explain to you is that at the time of deposit into the liquidity pool, based on your needs, what you want to do, you have to really think about what kind of range to set. Because in this case, for example, let's assume that XRP is now at $2.8 per XRP, and you set the range 2.3 and 3.5, more or less. Or maybe I can do it a bit better. Let's do 2.1, 2.3 and 3.5. So you set the range at between 2.1 and 3.5, more or less, right? And let's assume that the current price is 2.3. This is your entry. So if you give just a little bit of space to the downside, but a lot of space to the upside, let's say your range is -2% plus 30%, okay? In this case, you will be depositing mostly in Fxrps and just a bit in USDT zero. So your deposit ratio will be more or less 85 to 90% in Fxrp and just a little bit in USDT zero. In this case, what's going to happen, you will be deploying mostly fully in Fxrp. If XRP goes down a little bit, that small part of USDT zero will be converted and bought back into the Fxrp. But if the price of XRP is going up, you will be slowly converting out of Fxrp towards USDT zero, right? But meanwhile, while all of this is happening, you are earning the fees from each transaction that's happening in that pool. So essentially you are stacking more XRP because the fees are being paid also in 50-50 proportion. The half of your fees is in Fxrp, the other half is in USDT zero. So you are always getting more XRP, so to speak. And then if XRP goes up to 3.5 and reaches the upper limit of your range, you have two options. Either wait for a pullback. Once it goes back down, you once again back in range, earning the fees, right? And accumulating more fees, including Fxrp, or you will be here fully converted to USDT zero, sorry, and then essentially you can withdraw the money from the pool and swap back into the Fxrp if you want to be holding it for the continuous run, right? So you have multiple options. You just have to really think before you execute into the DeFi liquidity pool what you're going to be doing, what's your strategy. If your strategy is to deploy only XRP and just set a big range, set and forget, and just stack more Fxrps from the fees as the XRP goes up, right? Then it's a good strategy to deploy it like that. Just a bit downside, more upside, and just keep it running for a while. If it goes out of range from the lower side, you will be fully converted back to Fxrp, so you will have 100% Fxrp. Then what you can do is rebalance the pool, change the range, withdraw the money, and remake it everything once again with the lower price still more to the upside, right? Or you can do vice versa. Maybe you have some USDT available to allocate into the pool. So this could be the strategy. You deployed your Fxrp to lending protocol, to the kinetics, right, that I showed you before. You deploy to the lending protocol, then you borrow against your Fxrp in stablecoins in USDT zero, and then you allocate USDT zero into this pool, either on Enosys or SparkDex, doesn't matter, it's up to you, based on where you have higher TVL, higher fees, higher volume, right? And then you allocate like that. Let's say XRP is at 2.8, so you allocate at 2.8 and you go and give less upside range but more downside range, up to 1.77, for example. In this case, your deposit will be mostly, pretty much 90%, 95 even, to the USDT zero, and just a tiny bit in Fxrp, so you stay in range. And then if XRP is going down in price, you are actually being converted from your USDT zero back to Fxrp. So you are essentially getting dollar cost averaging automatically done for you, because you are getting more and more Fxrp at a better prices as the price goes down. Plus you are earning the fees. You are earning the fees also in Fxrp and USDT 0, which is also a good thing. So it really depends on what kind of strategy you want to be doing, whether you want to be exiting your Fxrp towards USDT or whatever else right in the pool and just want to get more fees, whether you want to be allocating just USDT, and as the XRP goes down on a pullback, right, you then want to be accumulating more, and then for example you deployed here at 2.8, the XRP is going down towards 1.77. At this point you will be fully in Fxrp converted, so you can withdraw the money. You will get your Fxrp at a better prices because you will be slowly converted all the way from 2.8 to 1.77, plus you will get all the fees earned from that pool as well. So you will essentially have even more Fxrps, right? Or if your strategy is to just have more Fxrp, then the best idea is to do something like this. Deploy mostly in Fxrp, give some range to the downside just in case, so you remain in range, but give most of the range to the upside and just keep it running. Just leave it, and just if you want, you can always add more into the range, add more liquidity, and essentially earn more fees, and just keep it running. So it's gonna be, you will be stacking more fees, more XRP as the price of XRP is moving somewhere, doing something. But the biggest mistake is deploying capital 50-50 proportion. In this case, 50-50 is usually the worst thing, because if XRP is going down too much, you will be experiencing impermanent loss that will become permanent, so to speak, and the fees will not cover. The APIs of these pools are not that high to cover the impermanent loss. So it's a bit of a problem. So you always have to think twice before executing into the DeFi LP, because now if we look at SparkDex, I just like the UI a bit more. Yeah, right, you see, let's do Fxrp USDT 0, let's do this, and let's do the expert. So you set the range. As you can see right now, I will be deploying, for example, right now, if we do -5 and +5, more or less, right? -5 +5, then I need, right? I need 5 Fxrps, which is like $14, and about the same in USDT 0, right? But if I do the range, for example, -5 plus 25, then I need only the same amount of XRP, $14, but I just need $3 in USDT 0, so I deploy mostly in Fxrp. If we do vice versa, if we do, let's say, plus 2% more or less and minus 18, whatever, right, then I will need just a bit of XRP and mostly in USDT 0. So depending on your situation, what you have in your wallet, maybe you have just XRPs, and maybe you don't want to be borrowing against it, you don't feel comfortable doing that, whatever the reason might be, then you want to be deploying the opposite. You want to be deploying just a bit downside, let's say -2%, and mostly in the upside. So you deploy mostly in Fxrp, and then you just accumulate more as the price goes up, and as people trade, you get the fees. If you have Fxrp and you want to do a bit of a smarter strategy, you can deploy them into the lending provision, so you are not touching your main Fxrps, borrow against them, let's say 30-40% maximum LTV. You want to borrow in stable coins and then allocate some stable coins to this range, more or less, just a bit of upside, more downside. So you deploy a bit of XRP mostly in that USDT 0 and expect the price of XRP to go down, and you will be accumulating more XRP at a better prices, plus you get the fees from being in the pool. So this is the approach that I would suggest to take moving forward. And then as more and more protocols will be launched, essentially with all of these Flare assets, etc., you will be able to go ahead and find even better opportunities. And of course, I will be here to cover them as well, because that's what I do. Do we have any? Yeah, we also have ETH Fxrp pool, but the TVL is really small, so I don't suggest. What about the volumes? What about the volumes? Okay. Yeah, I don't even want to be actually deploying into this one, but this one has over a million, 1.2 million in TVL. It's getting pretty nice movements. So definitely SparkDex is a bit of a better option for me, because I don't like the Genesis just general UI in general. But you have to look at where the money is rather than what you like. So if you see more money in Genesis and more volumes on this pool, then you should deploy to this pool, because this will earn you more fees. If you see better volumes and TVLs in this pool, then you should be using this pool, because all you have to do is find the pool with the most volume, daily volume, meaning people are trading and swapping. And the more people trade, the more they pay the fees. The more they pay the fees, the more you get paid as a liquidity provider. So hopefully this video was clear. Now when you, next week, when the cap is increased and you can get more Fxrps, and you want to make your XRP work for you, get the yield, think about this. What I just showed you is very, very important, okay? Your deposit ratio into the pool. So thank you. Have a fantastic week ahead. And of course, as always, I will see you on a next video.